Hey everyone, and welcome to Big Red Homestead. I'm Josh, that's Caleb, and today it is game week. It is predictions time. We're finally going to get to see Dylan Raiola in Memorial Stadium in real game action, and UTEP is coming to town, and we're going to be breaking it all down today. We're going to be going through UTEP's strengths and weaknesses, the X factors for the game, and everything we need to see in this game to feel good about Nebraska's season moving forward. So it's going to be a fun one. Caleb, how you doing?
I cannot wait. I'm ready to get hurt again.
Dude.
Nebraska football season 2024. I'm excited for the first time in a long time for Husker football. I mean, last year it was kind of exciting, but you knew the ceiling was...
Yeah, it was
Matt Rhule's
low.
track record year one wasn't great in general. It takes a while to build things,
sure.
and
I mean, come on, we were excited until we saw Jeff Sims. After about a half, we weren't as excited.
That's fair.
It's tough, man. I know. So I mean, that's the thing. Like this year, we're finally getting that game we need, and so today we're talking about like I said, what we need to see in this thing. So off the rip, let's talk about UTEP and the odds for the season for this game. So off the rip, UTEP's right now at about a 4.5 over under for wins. So
I think it's
right now the market's a little bit low on them. But yeah, obviously they have a lot of new pieces this year, new head coach. We'll talk about all that here in a bit. But as for the PFF Power ranks them at 120th in FBS, so not ideal. But 71st in average wins. And so right now going into this game, Nebraska is favored by 27.5 points. So that's that's steep. 48.5 point over under. So like right now the projected win total or the projected score is like, that means it's like 38-10 is kind of the projected score right now. So Nebraska's heavily favored. Obviously, there's a lot that can go right for Nebraska in this game, but really why we need to talk about this is we need to learn about Nebraska in this game to head into Colorado, obviously, in the following week and into Big Ten play into the future. So let's start there. What overall, walk us through UTEP, the changes from last year to this year, and the initial thoughts on this team.
Yeah, I think, long story short, this is a great jumping board game into Colorado. Scotty Walden is the first-year head coach, a guy who's never had a losing season when he is at the helm. It's a tough stretch for him. He had a 3-9 UTEP team last year with a lot of great pieces that frankly just didn't stay because college football is a carousel. It is in and out like a fast food restaurant for all of players. It is not easy sledding here. And you know what? Offensively, UTEP was really bad last year. 19.9 points per game, 119th in the country. Their defense allowed 28.5 points. That was 88th. And again, it's not like they were just playing Tennessee. But I think Scotty Walden is interesting. From Austin Peay University, he's got a high-flying, air raid, calorie. He loves to throw the ball. He loves the RPO. Fast pace, which I think is great for the Husker defense. Something different that we'll see. Again, no huddle. They love this speed. I think it's a great prep for Colorado in a lot of ways. But hey, because Scotty Walden, he is a winner, though. Led Austin Peay to 2 conference championships. Went 9-3 the past couple of years. Perfect conference record. It's an exciting time for UTEP. I think it's a good get, but it's year one, game one, new quarterback, which is a big point. I think, again, it's a good learning experience for Nebraska. It's something different that we won't probably see for the rest of the year.
Scotty Walden came in and they had their best recruiting class in UTEP history, which was 82nd in the country and 3rd in the Conference USA. It's like, nice. That kind of goes to show that the struggles that UTEP has had as a program in their history, but Walden has a little bit of momentum going here, and he brought in a lot of the talent that was at the winning program that was Austin Peay, and so there are some interesting pieces here. I think let's start talking about the offense here now, because the most interesting aspect to this is the system that they're bringing in here to UTEP is fascinating. Offensive coordinator Jake Brown was brought in from Louisiana Tech, who we happened to play last year. We've actually are going to see some styles of this offense. Of course, Walden's a guy who wants to bring in his system as well. So it's going to be a little bit of a mix between Austin Peay and what they were doing at Louisiana Tech. But of course, they were in the same conference. So there's a lot that you can expect that's going to be similar to how they played. So we had some fun watching Louisiana Tech film in preparation for this game, going back and watching some of the game last year as well, some Smoke Harris. And so it was a fun one. Yeah, like you said, they're going to be fast. And Walden emphasized that even in his press conference this week in game week was like, he thinks that we're not going to even have a chance to line up to the line of scrimmage at times where we're going to he's like, a lot of times teams only have one guy on the line of scrimmage by the time we snap the ball, and like Nebraska's not going to be set up at times. And so we have to be prepared for that and have a plan set in place. And so he was really thinking like Nebraska's going to be caught off guard by our speed. And so I think that's the first thing you have to talk about with this offense and what they're going into it with, at quarterback and everything else.
Yeah, I'm saying test the outside, Scotty Walden. I want to see it. Test the speed. I love it. Because again, I think they have a lot of chances to. Yeah, we saw the RPO a lot last year. Stuff just across the middle, and I thought that's what really worked best for Louisiana Tech. And then again, using Smoke Harris in a lot of different ways, we're going to see them do that as
sweeps,
well.
Use tunnel screens, bubble screens.
Exactly, jailbreak screens, every kind of screen. And then also again using their running back Javon Jackson again from Austin P. He could catch the ball. He could run the ball last season. I think he'll be a solid player and someone who they'll use a lot like that. Again, using him in the pass game, using him in the run game, trying to unlock a lot for him. But I just don't think it's going to be enough.
There's one big sore spot, right? And then the problem here is that like at Austin P, they're working with a quarterback, Mike DiLiello, which he was pretty
nice.
Efficient. He ended up actually with a 90 PFF grade last year. I don't think the film necessarily justifies that.
Not in the past.
But overall, like he was a pretty balanced quarterback.
Guy was pretty good.
Did a good job with the offense overall. But this year, they currently have a quarterback battle in UTEP camp between UTEP'S quarterback last year and the backup at Austin P last year, which was Skylar Locklear. So it's Cade McConnell versus Skylar Locklear. So tell me about this battle here and where you see this going and how it's going to affect this offense.
Yeah, McConnell was a fourth string guy at UTEP. And so that's a pretty big shocker. Yeah, going into last year. He's obviously moved up the depth chart quite a bit, but a guy that on PFF was not that impressive. He was like a 40, on the PFF
47.
grade. Yeah, 47. He only played in 7 games, like almost 400 snaps, but something that you love to see as a Nebraska fan that gets me hyped. Something that we were pretty good at last year was the turnover-worthy play rate, and that's almost at 8%, which, hey, it's only a full % worse than Nebraska.
Yeah, not nearly as impressive as ours.
Yeah, but 7.8%, and you saw it in the film. He's a guy who likes to throw downfield, but, sometimes he's throwing into triple coverage, and that'll come to bite you. He has a good enough arm where he thinks he can put it into some tight windows, and again, we saw some pick sixes taken to the house because of those aggressive lines that he chose to take. So I think there's a lot there for the Nebraska defense to be excited about. One, for me as a Husker fan, we have to capitalize on for me to feel confident about our defense going into the season. You feel like you need takeaways from a quarterback like this who is going to take some risks.
I mean, are you confident he's going to start? I mean, right now, the talk out of their side here, I mean, from head coach Scotty Walden is that this has been down to the wire, that they're basically exactly the same. And I watched a few press conferences with him. It wasn't like normal coach speak about quarterbacks. He was like going into stats and like reading off the stats for how close they are from their practice stats and all these things. So like he's really emphasizing like, no, this is close. How do you feel about Skylar Locklear, a backup quarterback from Austin P, competing with the fourth string quarterback from UTEP last year? The quarterback situation, in my opinion, is a bit of a downgrade versus Mike DiLiello last year.
It's definitely a downgrade. I think McConnell's not as much of a running QB, which I think is a problem.
Yeah, that's true.
Which DiLiello had the legs. Again, he was super good in the read option. He could get first downs with his legs. He could roll out a little bit better. Not to say that McConnell can't, but I still pick him as the front runner. This is a guy that wasn't in the system versus, Locklear, who was. But again, he's barely seen any time. He had 7 snaps last year, at Austin P versus a guy who's actually seen some experience. And I think that's
enough. And then he came in knowing the offense.
Yeah, exactly. And we're McConnell had to figure out a new offense. And so gut would tell me that a guy that's competing that close with someone who really doesn't know the offense that we're running says that McConnell's probably got the edge. But, if we do see 2 quarterbacks, I wouldn't be that surprised, I guess, from the coach speak.
And
but again,
he said
what they say about showing 2 QBs. If you got 2, you got none. So I think that's for sure. That is the truth.
It's a big downgrade. I mean, UTEP's offense last year, offensive line-wise, they were one of the best in the country pass protection. They were literally the second highest graded pass blocking team in the country last year in all of the FBS, behind only Oregon. The problem, obviously, for UTEP here, though, is they lost 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen. And one was drafted to the Bucks, and the others were undrafted free agents. And so that's a problem. And they're bringing in 2 tackles from Austin P. One's pretty good. had an 80.6 pass blocking grade last year, 75.4. But again, that's Austin Peay. It's even worse than UTEP. So it's like, it's hard to judge these PFF grades when there's not as much reliable data versus like Power 5 teams. So it is tough. I am worried about this offensive line replacing 4 starters and bringing in 2 guys from Austin Peay, tackles
with a
starting.
new QB.
And the right tackle, Brendan Smith, he had a 57 PFF grade last year at Austin Peay.
Hey, we have some guys that have some low grades on the offensive line too.
Yeah,
you can win games.
To be fair, I have faith that Turner would have above a 57.
Turner be a stud.
At Austin
He'd
Peay.
be a stud in the MIAC or whatever conference that is.
Yeah.
He'd be a beast.
This is a tough situation for that offensive line to hop into. And you stack that with an inexperienced quarterback and a new system. Like, yeah, they have some good pieces and they have a few playmakers at wide receiver. They brought in a guy named Jaden Smith from Eastern Kentucky who is experienced, like a 3-year contributor.
They needed a wide receiver transplant too.
So he might be their best player, in my opinion. A guy who was actually really productive at Eastern Kentucky last year. But besides that, it's hard to know where the production is going to come from. You're banking on running back from, Javon Jackson from Austin Peay's running back to come out here and make plays. That's going to be tough to do.
Yeah. And again, the other guys that they brought in were from Austin Peay and Trey Goodman and their motion back, kind of that Smoke Harris role of Cam Thomas.
Yeah. And they both look okay.
And they were fine. But yeah, again, they had some better wide receivers last year and that were a real strength for them. Both gone, both out of there. So
yeah,
I just feel like they're replacing so much, not to mention, new coach, new QB, but they're trying to effectively replace the wide receivers, replace the O-line. This was a team that last year was veteran that had so many different guys that played roles. So you are just transplanting everything for this team. And that's tough. Maybe that's a good thing down the line for the culture that, Scotty Walden's trying to set as the year goes on. But game one, that's not, again, when you're live fire against a Big Ten, offensive defense, that's tough.
They played at Tennessee last year, and it was 6-6 basically at halftime. I mean, they looked good in that first half against Tennessee. So what do you think happened in the Tennessee game versus
Joe
like the rest of the
Milton turned it on?
Joe Milton was like 1 for 12 versus Austin Peay though.
Again, with their system in line, I think that they could be they can make some noise. I think the speed is a great thing. And if you snap the ball quickly, that's a great way to even the odds when your defense is tired. And you're used to being that conditioned. It's a great way to win games. But I don't think they're going to be as fast as they want to be, especially in Memorial Stadium with 90,000 fans reinvigorated by Nebraska football bearing down on you at 2:30 on a beautiful Lincoln Saturday afternoon.
That's just to say that they are dangerous and like they're pretty well coached. And I think that's the biggest thing here. I do actually think that, I mean, first of all, Scotty Walton's a hype man. There's videos of him like shirtless at basketball games at UTEP, just hyping up the crowd. So he's a hype guy. And he's, I think he's like in his early 30s. Got the
pickaxe on his chest.
And so he knows how to bring the energy. He seems like a really knowledgeable coach and he's really, really vocal and really articulate. So I would assume he's a good coach. And so I would not be surprised if this team could come out with a lot of energy in this first half or the first quarter and be a tough team to put up points against or to stop for at least a little while. But at some point, the energy is going to wear off. And I think we should have an advantage there. So heading over to the defensive side here for Austin Peay, for UTEP, they may as well be Austin Peay. Last year, they were surprisingly good on the defensive side, regardless of the stats and the wins. So, I mean, it's weird that the team statistically was quite decent and they had some great players, but it was not showing up in the win column.
Yeah, again, they are so veteran. And when you do look at all the PFF grades, I was also very bewildered by how bad they performed on the win-loss column, which essentially is the most important one. But their defense was 7th in the country in third down conversion. They only allowed it 30% of the time. And then they had the 4th highest pass rush grade in the country. Again, UCLA, who had
insane.
A great Penn State, again, also had some great players. And then Michigan also, and then SMU, who also, again, just great Lions. So it is just really surprising. But here, the key factor that is none of those guys that were creating that chaos on that front line are really here. Terrence Knight, their best linebacker, gone. Keenan Stewart, their best defensive lineman, who was also gone. Oh, and Knight was drafted in the 4th round of the Seahawks. So again, a 4th round draft pick on an Austin Peay team, on a UTEP team is
Big time.
So that's a difference maker. It's a difference maker on any team.
If only we had players drafted that high.
Exactly. So, and then praise Amawule, another edge rusher who was really good. But again, they lose all of this. And, you know, Amawule was their leader.
That production
leader
is
in
brutal.
sacks. Kenya's Vaughn also lost to Utah. So, again, that's the tough thing about these small teams. You show out and you show up at a UTEP, all of a sudden you're getting phone calls from, you know, a Utah team who's really impressive. Or, again, you know, you're out to the league because you had such a great season. So it's so surprising that they lost as many games as they did. Makes sense why they brought in a new coach, but you know, it's too bad Scotty Walden didn't walk into some of these. You know, if he walks into some of these guys, it's like I'm a little bit worried about UTEP. Week one. You know, it's like this is a little bit closer than that 27.5 point line. But to the fact that again they're just so young and have so many questions to answer. I just don't think that they got enough to plug in to be as threatening as they were to that Tennessee team last year.
I think their pass rush is still going to be decent. They still have Maurice Westmoreland, which was one of their most productive pass rushers last year. And they brought in a really respective pass rusher from Missouri State, Devin Gray, and he was decent. So, I mean, again, it's Missouri State. I get it. But like, they at least have some pieces to work with here. We know our offensive line. So this is why I'm saying it's a nice test. It's obviously a good baseline. If I had to assume they're going to be the worst D-line, D-front we're going to play all year long, maybe besides Northern Illinois. And so it's a pretty nice baseline. Like if our offensive line can really keep Dylan up here, then you're in a good spot. But I think it's not any guarantee. So from the secondary side, this is probably where their biggest strength is. They're returning AJ Odoms, who was really, really solid last year, 70.1 grade on PFF and played 640 snaps. So he was pretty durable. And they brought in some of their best players from Austin Peay who looked good on tape. So like out of all the guys on tape on Austin Peay who looked the best, it was their safeties, Corey Chapman and Xavier Smith, who I thought were really explosive. They hit hard and they seem to be pretty intimidating players, like guys you don't want to play against. So
I think the only worry is Chapman seemed a little short, but besides that,
sure,
you know, maybe a little undersized, but I think that's something you get in an Austin Peay, but you know, a lot of fight. So I agree with you. It definitely, that looked like the most, like on tape, you're like, oh, that was a really good player. Oh, that's a really hard hit in comparison. And you're like, and you look at the roster and you're like, oh, they actually is going to stay on the team. When you look at all the other great plays, it was like, gone, not here anymore, transferred. So I agree. It's, you know, moving away from UTEP into the X factors for the game, you know, game one, you know, things that we want to see happen, the X factors that are going to be the difference.
What's going to open up this game, right?
Yeah, and I think it's going to be the linebacker play for Nebraska, especially on the outside, what the Jack's going to do, what MJ Sherman, how he's going to be able to perform, how Vince Shaver is going to be able to perform in these settings, because, again, they want to attack the flats. That's what they like to do. Quick things, which is smart, right? You want to get the ball out fast. You want to get to the line fast. And, you know, with Nebraska, you're not going to be allowed much time, especially with the all-new offensive line. So how can our linebackers, how can our guys playing close to the line of scrimmage, how can those guys tackle in those spaces? Because that is, you know, where they see the advantage with their speed. And that's, I think, really going to be the X factor on that defensive side for me. But again, I think whoever quarterback it is, I'm excited. I want to see takeaways. I want to see takeaways, especially on this side. I want to see our linebackers. I want to see Marquez Buford, you know, light up a guy, get a fumble, you know, get a pick. MJ Sherman, I want them to underestimate him, try and get him out in coverage and just expose a guy. You know, if I'm seeing that, or if I'm seeing Vince Shaver's doing that, you know, that's
clearly turnovers are an X factor. I mean, they're an X factor every single game. I think for me, it's more about that we actually capitalize on the turnover worthy plays that they
make a play,
us.
As Matt Rhule has been saying. Yeah.
I mean, it's for us, because I mean, even last year, there was moments where it's like you dropped the pick.
Isaac Gifford.
I mean, there was multiple different players, not just
all
Gifford,
those guys. Yeah.
Or, you know, the ball's on the ground and we don't come up with it. And so it's like, there's these moments where it's like, why are we not converting these? And so at the baseline, that's what I'm looking for. Coming to linebackers more specifically, I saw a clip of their coach doing like this like coaching segment where he was talking about how to attack outside linebackers or jacks. And he was using, you know, high-low routes or scissor routes to kind of make the linebacker choose, or mesh schemes to make the linebacker choose. He was really talking about how he likes his quarterbacks to attack Jack. So that's very interesting to me, especially when we haven't seen MJ Sherman be a great pass defender in coverage. And so that's probably my biggest X factor when it comes to strategy, how MJ Sherman deals with that. And if he makes the right decisions and if he reacts quickly and can adjust himself pre-snap. Otherwise, I want to see him off the field. And I want to see Prince William and Milan out there because I think that's really the player we want to see out there. The depth chart left more to be desired. And so hopefully Uman Milan's guy can come in and absolutely come in and dominate. Yeah, that's a big one for me. Obviously, then we have to talk about the offensive lines. For us, it's attacking their right tackle, Brennan Smith. Find ways to mix it up and really go after him. For their X factor, it's going after, of course, Turner Corcoran, who was one of the 10 worst offensive linemen in all of college football last year out of 1,000 offensive linemen. I'm excited to see how the offensive line as a unit plays here. And of course, like you can say, like establishing the run as an X factor. Yeah, of course. But for me, it's more about, I think we have an opportunity to out physical this team and really use, like this could be a game where Gabe Ervin could really find a rhythm here as a downfield runner between the tackles. I'm looking at the A gap and the B gap.
We saw Tennessee abuse them between the tackles all game. That was really
Wright
what broke
for
it up.
Tennessee was just obliterating them in the A gap and the B gap there. So, I mean, maybe any of our running backs could do that, but especially I'm looking for Gabe Ervin in his first game back after injury to come out here and look physical, look like the physical stud that he is. We know he is. And when we saw some of his burst in the past where he can get to the outside, and when you give him a little bit of space, he can accelerate. And so whether it's Emmett Johnson or it's Gabe Ervin, or I mean, even Dante Dowdle, I think we're going to really try to be physical here and establish our running game presence early. Of course, Rhule said he's not going to ease into it with Dylan Raiola. He's going to open up the playbook, and this thing is
good,
pedal to the metal. But then that means we're looking for, at the end of the day, I still want to see him get into a rhythm and not ask him to do, quote unquote, too much. You don't want him to force the ball early. And so for me, it's more about, all right, let's make this easy on him. Let's establish the run and set up passes that are easy to complete downfield. It's not that complicated at times. And so for me, that's really where it starts is winning the battle up front and then running the ball physically. What are other things that you want to see in this game specifically? Not just X factors, but maybe as a Nebraska analyst. What are the things you are really watching for as signals for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I agree with you, just being physical and establishing the run. I think it's important for Dylan Raiola to learn early that this team is good enough where you don't have to be Superman. We saw that with Adrian Martinez later on. He talked about that, feeling like he had to do too much, take the hits. And it's like, we have a great defense this year.
Take the hits.
We should have great running backs. We have great wide receivers. Let's not do too much. And, that's one thing I'm hoping to see again, freshman game, first game. You don't have to make the hero play all the time. Just play within the system. I think he's going to do that. I'm not really worried about him. I believe he's that guy. So, but I just hope that he gets to feel that this week as our defense just absolutely devours everything that UTEP throws at them.
Sure.
That's what I want to see. But for guys I'm curious about, Isaiah Nair is at the top of the list for me. It's the top of the list. He at Wyoming, you watch the tape, it's unreal. There's a reason that Texas, a college football playoff team, wanted him and wanted, Quinn Ewers to be passing him the ball and Arch Manning passing him the ball. And, it's difficult that he had such a bad season-ending injury.
And he was
the year before.
Coming off that injury, and then he ends up in the most insane depth chart of the entire
Mitchell and Xavier
year.
Worthy are tough to beat, but, you still hope that he would have seen the field, and he hasn't. So there's so many question marks on him. But if he's talented like that Texas wide receiver core was, that he was brought into, if he's as talented as that Wyoming,
he won the job. He beat out
the
freshman.
Yeah.
So it's like, obviously the coaches see something here. I'm skeptical. I definitely am skeptical. Yeah. I mean, when do you see a guy who coming off an injury has one catch or one snap in a season and then the next year just dominates? I mean, that's
luckily
really,
if it was at one place,
really
Texas would have been one of the best ones because the wide receiver core is so deep. And maybe you think about, Trey Palmer, who was a little underwhelming at LSU because he had some great wide receivers in the room. Maybe that could be the case for him. I know he definitely did. He caught some more passes and had some better highlights. But at the same way Nair did at Wyoming, he had some pretty crazy ones. So I think for me, that's one of the highest ones. Another question for me is Mackay Byer.
Yeah.
I'm really curious on
Byer
him
and Bullock, just in general, the linebackers.
Yeah, I think it's because we just feel like there's other guys who you would have rather seen number one on the depth chart. I'd rather have seen Vince Shavers over Bullock, especially how much they were talking about Shavers. Yeah.
Hard to say, but that's why it's interesting to me is I want to see how good Bullock can actually be here. I mean, this is a game where physically he should be able to be, he should be great. I mean, there's no reason why he can't dominate against a team like UTEP. This is where I get scared. It's like if Byer or Bullock has a bad game here, then you're worried. And then's where you want to see Shavers have a great game. That's why I think it's actually a really good test for these guys because they're going to get to the edges. They're going to force them to tackle in space. And so I want to see them dominate. Really, really do.
And lastly, I think the other biggest question mark is the secondary, just in general. I'm curious on Buford. I'm curious how Hartzog's going to do. Just in general, the whole thing I'm excited to see,
the new positions for them is super interesting.
As solid as our defense is and as complete as it is, the secondary, which we did lean on a lot in the second half of the season, is really new. And, again, that's my question. If we're going to be there is a lot of moving parts. And I just want to see if we can be as complete and unified as a unit. And if we can really take that
I would just say more broadly,
step.
not just secondary, but just in coverage. That counts the linebacking core. So you have Buford playing his first time at corner. You have Singleton back from injury. And then you have John Bullock and Mackay Byer, who have had questionable moments in coverage themselves, not to mention Sherman is a jack. So there are question marks here when it comes to pass coverage. Obviously, we trust a lot of the individual talent, especially when it comes to tackling in space. But there is still room to be desired, I think, to prove themselves as lockdown coverage guys. So with all of that said, where are we at with the predictions? I mean, like I said, originally the odds, it's a 27.5 point spread. Nebraska's favored pretty heavily. So where are you at with this game? What are your thoughts?
More than anything, as a fan, I want to see Dylan score. That's what I'm hoping for as a fan.
Sure.
And just our defense being able to shut them down. I would love to see for 3 quarters to put the absolute clamps to win the field position battle, where this is just overwhelming as the line says.
It's like 28-0 halftime.
Yeah, exactly. I just want it to be suffocating where Heinrich gets some meaningful snaps at backup QB, where we get to see Danny Kalen for a while in the fourth quarter. I think that's what's best for our team, especially going into Colorado as well. So I think there's a lot of that where I really want to see us dominate for 4 quarters with all of our different units. I think we do it. I don't think this team is complete, and I think that's a lot of it for UTEP. But I also think this is a great learning experience for us, and I'm excited to actually get a tune-up game. But I think we make the most of it. I think, you've heard all the coach talk in the practices of, you can't get our starting defense off for the kickoff returns because they don't want to give up the snaps. They don't want to give up the extra reps. And I think that they do some serious damage and give us a great spot for UTEP. Just great field position for Dylan Raiola. And again, I'm pretty confident that Dylan Raiola is the real deal going into this. I think I'm going to walk away seeing 2 or 3 throws, and I'm like, we haven't had a guy like at Nebraska that I've seen do that before. I think that's going to happen.
Sure. Wait, so what's your score?
45-9.
Okay. All right.
I'm taking the over on the points, and I'm going that.
You're taking the spread.
I'm picking Nebraska.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Okay. I mean, I'm in a relatively similar boat with you. I clearly believe we're going to come out here and we're going to show, at least for sure, the first team is great. Really, for me, the key here isn't that, the first team does what they need to do. I think that's going to happen. The question for me is, can the second string, the rotation guys really come in and be difference makers as well? Because to me, that signals that we've leveled up. Obviously, the big question marks here is the offensive line. And I mean, we haven't even talked about special teams. I mean, ideally, I'd like to see us knock through a few field goals at some point in this game and actually convert and not
Alvano's still hurt. We might not even see him.
Well, yeah, exactly. So those are all question marks as well. There's a world where our defense just suffocates them here, and they turn the ball over like 4 times, and they can't get anything going. And in that world, we could dominate 52-3 or something like that. I'm not going to go that confident. I think, like you said, we're going to have a pretty balanced offense. I fully expect us to establish this run, and all three running backs, even including Dowdle, maybe all four, will see a decent amount of time. It seems like Rhule wanted to do that and ensure that all four of them get some time to help him sift out who can separate themselves. But yeah, I think it's pretty clear that Gabe and Emmett Johnson are the two clear best all-around running backs for this team, including pass protection. And Emmett will probably separate himself. So with all of that said, I think we're going to establish the run. Dylan's going to have a pretty straightforward, easy game. I don't think it's going to be like by any means dominant. We're not going to need him to be because the run game is going to be efficient. But I'm going to take us 41-13. And this defense probably gets 2 or 3 takeaways. You win the turnover battle, maybe 3-1 in a game like this. We might put one on the ground or something like that in a game like this. But pretty confident we're going to get the ball.
Over under Dylan 300 yards.
Under.
Yeah,
I'm thinking. What would your prediction be? Mine would probably be like 175.
Ooh, I'd say more. I think he gets around the 250 mark.
That's a pretty big game for a Nebraska quarterback. 250 is a huge game.
I mean, yeah, I don't think for him, but yeah, maybe for Nebraska.
Benchmark. That's what I'm saying. Obviously, I don't know. How many games did Casey Thompson have over 250? Oh, interesting. 5 of his 10 games had over 250.
Yeah, I think he gets over 250.
Interesting. It's going to be close. It's going to be really close. That's actually a good line.
I'd guess 285.
I mean, like against North Dakota, for example, Casey Thompson had 193. So I could see something like that for
yeah, it depends on how good we beat him.
Yep, I'm right with you there. So overall, I think it's going to be a fun week, and we're going to have a lot to talk about next week, obviously, when it comes to takeaways and, of course, predictions for Colorado. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Drop your comments down below and your predictions, and we'll shout out the most accurate prediction in the next video. So drop a comment. But we appreciate you guys for watching. As always, I'm Josh. That's Caleb. This has been Big Red Homestead, and guys, we will see you next time.
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red, baby.
Let's go.